Welcome to the Wrestling with Success podcast. In this show, you'll learn how to use lessons used in sports so you can use failure as your secret weapon for success and succeed in the real world. Here's your host, former Division I All-American wrestler, former Division I head coach, husband, father, adventure seeker, and entrepreneur, Jim Harshaw.
Welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Success. Today I bring you Josh Spodek. Before I bring on my guest, I need to share something important. For years, I struggled to feel confident around the type of people that I spend much of my time with. Successful people, millionaires, CEOs, leaders. And part of it was mindset. But part of it also was how I looked. You know, they say look good, feel good, as the saying goes. And I didn't look good. I didn't have clothes that made me feel confident. So I started buying expensive shirts. Then I had to get them tailored fit to me, my body, my athletic build. And then I discovered a new shirt. It's not only designed by athletes for athletes, but it's designed to fit an athlete's body type. And it's made of athletic material. It's like putting on your favorite workout shirt. But it's a business shirt. It's machine washable. It's wrinkle-free, which is a deal breaker for me. I hate high-maintenance clothing. And it looks better than the expensive shirts that I used to buy, and it even costs a little bit less. So I feel more confident now that I'm wearing good-looking, well-fitted clothing that's designed to fit me, to fit athletes. If you want to see it, I actually shot a quick short video of me opening my second shirt. Yes, I got a second shirt, and I'm going to be buying more to show you the fabric and the fit. Just go to jimharshawjr.com, grab the coupon code, and take a look for yourself. You can actually try one totally risk-free because it's free shipping for my listeners with that special discount code at jimharshawjr.com/shirt. And returns, exchanges, 100% free within 30 days, so there's absolutely no risk to try one out. Again, jimharshawjr.com/shirt. This is my first time modeling clothing, so don't laugh. The shirt's awesome, but my modeling skills, not so much. It's probably worth checking out the page just to see my bad modeling. Again, jimharshawjr.com/shirt. Josh Spodek is a professor at NYU and a columnist for Inc. magazine online. He holds 5 Ivy League degrees, including a PhD in astrophysics, as well as an MBA, both from Columbia University, where he studied under a Nobel laureate. He holds 6 patents. He leads seminars in leadership, creativity, sales, strategy, and motivation at institutions including, but not limited to, Columbia Business School, Harvard, Princeton, Columbia, MIT, and a bunch of others. His coaching clients include startup founders as well as employees of companies like Citigroup, American Express, Google, Yahoo, Sony, IBM, ExxonMobil, U.S. Army, U.S. Navy, and a lot of others there as well. He's been quoted and profiled by ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, I think ABCDE as well, Wall Street Journal, and a lot of others. He's also, in terms of athletics, he's completed 6 marathons, and he's competed at the world level in ultimate frisbee. His blog at joshspodek.com is for successful people who want to bring about more of that success, which is a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today. If you don't have time to listen to this entire episode, or if you hear something that you like but you don't have time to write it down, be sure to grab your free copy of the action plan from this episode, as well as get access to action plans from every episode at jimharshawjr.com. Josh, welcome to the show.
Jim, great to be here. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I came across your stuff online a while back, and I reached out to you, and man, the more I read about you and learn about you and talk with you and get to know you, the more fascinated I am, especially with the leadership topics that you write about and you've developed into courses and whatnot. But first, let's tell the listener a little bit about your athletic background.
My athletic background, I guess, I was a little chubby as a kid. It wasn't until high school. I played like Little League, but it wasn't until high school that I started running cross country. But it was really when I started college and I played ultimate frisbee there. My first year, we went to nationals, and it was an incredible team. And I don't know if I feel like frisbee now is a pretty popular sport, but still people might not know how intense the sport is. It's like for a good 10, 15 years of my life, when the snow melted in March until it started coming down in November, that's what I did. And I mean, I went to nationals again years later and almost made it again another time and played at Worlds. And it was like probably 4 days a week in the off season, 5 days a week in the on season. And that's what I did. I mean, I love playing Ultimate, and it's been one of the best things in my life in terms of what it's given to me in terms of discipline and dedication. And so that when I started getting older and I couldn't really compete as well, that's when I started playing, I started running marathons. And that was really just a friend of mine did it, and I just decided to do it too. Yeah, it was really, I mean, Ultimate is really the big thing. I still play. I just turned 45 2 days ago, and my body just can't do what it once did. And I'm kind of nervous about laying out like I did before. Like my bones are more brittle, and I can't run like I used to. It's kind of frustrating, but man, do I love going out on the field and the grass and just throwing the disc around. And I wish I could run sprints like I could before. This other thing, which I don't know if this counts as athletics, but I do about 5 years ago, I was reading this article about someone, it's the New York Times, they asked someone if you could name, they asked a bunch of fitness experts, if you could pick one exercise and one exercise only to be the best exercise of all. And they said, what would it be? And they mentioned this thing called a burpee, which I'd never heard of before. And I mentioned it to a friend, and then we decided, let's do 10 burpees a day for the next 30 days. And that was December 2011, I think. And I have not missed a burpee since. I decided during that month to do them, and I'm approaching 80,000 burpees. I do 26 every morning now, 26 every evening. And like, I never miss one. So I don't know if that counts as athletic. And by the way, I've added to I do abs and stuff for the back too. And so it's not athletic in the sense of competitive, but in terms of discipline and dedication and integrity and things like that, it's a major piece of what I do.
And yeah, in just terms of lifelong fitness, it's a great way to stay fit. And there's so many other benefits to staying fit. It's not just, you look good at the beach. It's, your mind and everything else works better. You stay more focused. You're more productive. You get more done, that sort of thing. So that's a big part of why I stay fit these days, is just for all the other sort of benefits of it. I had to make that shift from being an athlete. I worked out for a purpose, for a different purpose, to win wrestling matches, and to make that shift to find a different motivation for working out. But yeah, so that definitely counts. And Ultimate Frisbee, it's a fun game, and it's certainly not a like you said, you getting older, you kind of feel it a little bit in your bones, but it's not a lifelong sport, and wrestling is certainly not a lifelong sport either. So it's maybe a little bit more of a lifelong sport for those of us getting in our 40s. So
yeah,
Josh.
And also with Ultimate, it's funny if the younger me knew the me now. When I was playing competitively, one thing mattered, and that was winning the last game of the season, winning finals. And everything was built around that. And now it's really more about fun. But yeah, that change comes with time.
So how did you get from there to here? From being, you went through high school, or maybe it sounds like maybe college, you picked up Ultimate Frisbee. And so talk to us a little bit more about what else you've been doing. I read off, you have 5 degrees from Ivy League universities. Tell us a little bit about that and how that led into what you're doing now.
Sure. And then I'll give you the very fast version. And if there's more to go into, let me know which part. So the intellectual passion in my life has always been physics. And I just loved it. When I was a kid, I tried to hide it because I was very nerdy and I didn't want to get picked on. But then, in college, I was like, you know what? I love it. I'm going to do it. So after college, I went to get a PhD. That was a big challenge, playing Ultimate and getting a PhD at the same time. But partway through graduate school, I realized that research wasn't I love the subject, but the life of a graduate student is just really difficult. And around that time, some friends, actually former teammates from playing Ultimate together, approached me about starting a company together. And I had an idea, and we started a company. And so the last 2 years of graduate school were the first 2 years of writing the business plan and sneaking out of my lab to go over and take classes in the business school on how to approach venture capitalists and things like that. And so invented this technology, wrote all these patents, business plans, things like that, got funded. In the early 2000s, there was a recession, and I got squeezed out of the company that I founded by the investors. It was a very difficult time. So then I worked at a friend's company for a little while, but realized I really like starting companies, and that sense of ownership of having created it yourself was very important to me. Went back to school to get it. I just didn't have any business background except for having started this company. So that's when I went back to business school. Went in for the hard skills, accounting and finance and things like that. And in one of the great strokes of luck in my life, I found out that the soft skills were much more valuable to me. And things like leadership, entrepreneurship, sales, negotiation, and things like that, things that you can't just like write a spreadsheet for. And so that was about 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago. And the past 10 years, that has become my passion. I've started a couple of companies since, but the real thing has been, I know how valuable this material is for me, for a lot of people like me, but also the way that I was taught, valuable as it was, it left a lot out. The teaching methods was mostly lecture, case study, and reading and writing papers. And that might fly for some academic subjects. Maybe that's good for economics. But for something that's performance-based, I mean, imagine you want to learn to wrestle and someone says, all right, here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to spend a year in the classroom and I'm going to lecture to you about wrestling theory. Like no one would ever work with that person.
Right.
It's just not effective.
Yeah, you couldn't learn that way.
Yeah. And so my passion has been to realize how we learn in all these other areas. And sports has been this incredibly valuable resource of how we learn sports. Because, people who don't do it, they look at it and they think like, oh, that person's a jock or something like that. And they don't realize like what you learn, the integrity and the teamwork that only comes from these emotional and social challenges of, man, I remember going out on the field now it's funny, when the game is on the line, I don't go out on the field because I know younger guys got to be there. But when I love going out on the field, like I wanted to be on the field when it was like game point or, tournament point. And I knew I wanted to be on the field, but then when I actually started walking on the field, I was like nervous. I was like I couldn't think straight,
Yeah.
I'm like, what am I doing? What if I mess up? What if I drop the disc? And then you just pray for like, once the disc gets into play, then you can go on autopilot. And that training,
right. Sure.
That training is like hugely important. And when you look at what's happening in the classroom, then a lot of people think, well, you're learning, if you're reading about some leader from before, you're like learning what they did, but we look at the behavior. The behavior is you're following instruction and sitting still and not actually interacting with people. You're just living inside your head when you're reading or writing. And the behavior that you're teaching is passive, not doing stuff. And that doesn't happen in sports. You have to go out and do things. You have to, you lose a lot. You win a lot. You have to face these things. And my courses are now designed to give you experience doing things. First you do it on a more protected scale with people that you know, so that when you do it with someone that when the chips are down and it's really like you walk in a room and your company's on the line, or you're trying to negotiate with someone and you don't have any, you don't have nothing, but you got to go out there and actually make things happen. You fall back not on words that you read, but on things that you did. Same thing as when you're out there for the tournament point, you got to fall back on your practice, on theory.
That's really interesting what you talk about leadership, because we all, a lot of my listeners love to read leadership books, but you can't learn leadership just out of a book. I mean, it certainly can be part of your education. Talk to me a little bit about, and talk to the listener a little bit about your sort of four core pieces of leadership, starting with understanding yourself and build, that I think you're building a course around it, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so I have a few courses that are my big courses, and the big one, one of the big ones is leadership. And the way that I teach it, it's very experiential, and you start with exercises. Each exercise is based on an actual leadership practice, just like, in sports. And the first one is so easy that anyone can do it. And the next one is a little bit more challenging, but also a little more in depth. And the next one a little bit more and a little bit more. And then the next thing you know, a couple of months into it, you're doing things that even very advanced, very skilled leaders might not know how to do. And I break it down into units. So the 4 units are understanding yourself, leading yourself, understanding others, leading others. So understanding yourself is about mindfulness and perception and how you giving yourself a little bit more awareness of how you think. This is like the foundation for everything. And then leading yourself is about creating habits, how to speak authentically, and then understanding others is it's taking what you've learned so far about yourself and extrapolating that into others. And so it's a lot about the human emotional system. I think of like plumbers use wrenches to work with pipes, and carpenters use saws to work with wood, and leaders use emotions to work with people. And these are the tools that we work with, the emotion. So you have to know your tool. And then leading yourself is where what everything is building up to, is how to behave and communicate in ways that people feel comfortable sharing vulnerabilities with you, which, their vulnerabilities tend to be their emotions, the things that they care about, and also the things that you can motivate them with. And that's where people start to get really, things come together and they start leading people and finding out that people love being led effectively if you are compassionate, if you lead with empathy and compassion and you create meaning and value. And these are the things that come through behavioral interactions and meaningful connections that I learned through all after school, not in school. But I don't think that you need to be outside of school. I think you can teach it in a structured way. You've had to face challenges that classrooms didn't do, but you still did it in a way under a coach or with someone teaching you.
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting you talk about learning after school, and so much of my education took place outside of the classroom. It took place through wrestling, whether it's through competing, whether it's training by myself or training under a coach or doing an extra workout or in practice and working as a team. It's really interesting to think about. It's not all about just sitting behind a desk or just opening a book and reading and learning. Josh, tell us about where you see most leaders failing, or where sort of the missing piece that most leaders have. And you coach a lot of individuals and through organizations, and you run seminars, et cetera, about this. And what is it that you see where most leaders fail? Or is there no such thing as most leaders? Everybody's different and have different strengths and weaknesses, but where do you think the gaps are?
Man, there's a lot of gaps. I think one of the most common ones that I see is that there's a major view in the United States, probably in the world, maybe everywhere, that leaders are like, they put on the blue paint on their face and they charge into battle in front of everyone. And it's like as if they're first and they're most in charge. And I think that effective leadership, one of the most important concepts I try to get across is that the more that you put the interests of the other person first, the more effective that you're going to be, and put yourself in the background. Martin Luther King, I think, was like one of the great leaders. He wasn't leading people to do what he wanted them to do. He was leading them to do what they wanted to do in the first place. Or Eisenhower has a great quote. I'm not going to be able to say it perfectly, but he says, leadership is getting someone to do what you want for their reasons.
Yeah.
And if you think it's about you, they're going to view you as imposing your values on them more than helping them achieve what they want. If you have people that don't want to do what needs to be done, that's a hiring issue. You've created the team ineffectively. If you have people that want to do stuff, I found one of the most effective things you can do is to get them to be able to share their motivations and then use those motivations to help them. Those motivations are going to be more powerful than anything that you could ever layer on top. And if you try to put a motivation on top of that, especially if that motivation is something like an external thing like money or a corner office, you're going to imply that you don't value the motivations that were there before you ever met them. And I hope that people listening to this podcast, they're probably surrounded by people who worked hard to get where they are. They are people who got to where they worked hard to get to where they are. And if you worked hard to get to where you are, probably the people around you did. And that means something's been motivating you to work through school, to go up against whatever challenges you've had to face, your parents saying you should do something different, or having to go through all these rounds of interviews and get into graduate school or something like that. If you're not flipping burgers, you worked hard to get where you are. And that motivation is going to motivate you more effectively than anything else. And as a leader, putting yourself ahead of your follower is going to it's going to shut them down from sharing that motivation with you. You're not going to be able to know how to motivate them.
If you could pick one of those 4 areas that you talked about earlier, understanding yourself, leading yourself, understanding others, leading others, is there one that people struggle with most, or maybe one that's foundational? Maybe understanding yourself is a great place to start.
It's...
Go ahead.
Sorry?
Well, go ahead. I was going to say, what is there any practical sort of concrete advice that the listener can take? And, not having, gone through your course or read any of your blogs yet, any practical advice that they could apply to learn about, to better understand themselves or better lead themselves?
Well, all right, so there's 2 open questions right now. One of them is which one of these parts is the best and what's the advice?
Yeah.
And, I'll go with the second one first on the advice. Is that the concept that I described earlier about doing these burpees every day is I've learned, that has been probably what I've learned more from than anything else. Of all the achievements that I've done, I've gotten a lot done in life. And the most valuable thing for getting things done is to have one thing that you do every day, what I call a SID chop. I created this term, self-imposed daily challenging healthy activity, SIDCHA, SID chop.
Love that.
And I started doing burpees every day. And once 10 was too easy, I had to do 11. Once 11 was too easy, I had to do 12. And once I realized I wasn't getting my back into it, I had to do some pull exercises. And once I realized I had to do some stretching, I had to do some stretching. And then I post on my blog every day. So I've not missed a blog post in something like 6 years, something like 2,200 posts by now. And a lot of people ask me, like, what's the point of doing this blog? It's like, it's not like, if you put that time into writing books, well, I got a book contract, but if you put that time into other things, you could market and stuff like that. And what you learn when you do something every day, no matter what, like I was talking to someone about how I do burpees every day. And he was like, oh, I want to do that. I want to do that. And he says, well, when you're sick, you don't do them, right? Or like when you're really busy. I said, that's when you do them most. When I come home and I'm like tired or I'm drunk or I got stuff to get up to early the next morning. Like after I run a marathon and I have to do 52 burpees because the marathon starts really early. So I do the marathon. Then I'm like, those are really hard burpees, but that's why, like those hard ones are what the other ones prepare you for. And then when you do those ones, like that's when you know yourself. That kind of self-awareness, it comes from doing burpees when you've just run a marathon. I'm not saying that's like the hardest thing in the world. People run 50 miles. So what's 26? Like that's the kind of thinking you have to have. And it's most of the burpees that I do are, no one has any idea that I'm doing them. I could not do them and tell people I'm doing them, but that's not why I'm not doing it for pride. I'm doing it for, I can't explain why I'm doing it. If you do it, like I talk to people and they do things like this and they know, I've listened to you talk about, if I remember right, I don't remember the details, you going up against the number 4 guy or something like that.
That's right.
And you'd never gone up against someone that at that level before.
Right. And never beaten anybody in the top 5. Yeah.
And there's something in your head, right? Like your body, you train your body, but there's like something in your mind that happens. You have to face yourself. It's like running up a hill when you're 20 miles in on a training run and it's like 95 degrees outside. There was one time I was running in Central Park, and look, my marathon, I haven't qualified for Boston. It's not like my big thing. But one time I was running in Central Park and I think it might have hit 100 that day. And Central Park is a really busy place. There's a lot of people there. But on this particular day, I'm running along and I see up ahead, there's like something on the path. And I'm like, I wonder what that is. It's like a leaf, but it was in the middle of summer. It's like the leaves haven't started falling yet. And when I get there, it's a $20 bill lying in the middle of the ground in Central Park. There was no one in the park that day. Like that's like, how long is a $20 bill going to lie on the ground in New York City?
Not long.
And to me, the answer to the advice of things that you can do is like find a SID chop, find something that's a self-imposed daily challenging healthy activity and start doing it. And it doesn't have to be athletic. I mean, I like athletic stuff because that's important to me, but I know people who do things like they write down 5 business ideas every day. Or I was talking to someone, she wanted to be an artist and she was in graduate school studying art history. And I was like, why are you doing art history? She said, because I love art. And I was like, why do you love art? She's like, I want to be an artist. I said, is art history helping you become an artist? And she said, no. And within an hour, we were at an art supply store buying her, or she was buying for herself, some charcoal and paper, and she was going to do a drawing a day for the next, I don't know how, that was like her starting point. I hope she's still doing it.
Yeah. Wow.
And there was not, because I mentioned her, there's a page that's now down, but someone was doing like a painting a day or drawing a day for a year. And this is one of the most inspirational things I've seen. It was like 300 days of garbage and then like a day of kind of like interesting. And then like about 10 or 20 days of like interesting. And then suddenly you're like shockingly beautiful drawings, no classes. And when you do this, like my burpee form, my friend was like, hey, I posted like a video of me doing it. And my friend was like, your form's really good. And it's not great, but it's, wow, how does it get great? Because I practice it and there's like burpee form. What is it? It's how to do a push-up. It's no big deal.
Sure.
But when you do it every day, you have, like the example I usually give is in meditation. If you choose meditation to be your Sidsha, there's a lot of resources out there for like how to meditate. I don't recommend reading them all first and learning how to do it first. First, do it. Like pick an amount of time, pick like 10, 20 minutes a day and sit down, no matter what, do it. And you're going to get bored and your butt is going to hurt. Your legs are going to be on fire because like your muscles aren't, they're fighting against each other to sit still. That's going to force you to learn how to do it. And then you will find the resources. First begin with action and the theory will come in. Like I teach, it's very action oriented. It's very experiential. I will put any of my students against anyone in theory. I think you still will learn more theory if you force yourself to do the action because you have to figure out what's going on.
Yeah. First begin with action. I love that.
Yeah. And stick with it. You got to keep doing it. And then fill it in. Don't be content with like doing it half-assed. You gotta, the resources are out there. Anything you're doing, there's someone who's done it really well and there's great stuff out there. Just use the motivation to get it to be that you want to improve your practice. Then the theory will be much more meaningful than if you start with theory.
I love the idea of having a Sidsha. Episode 33 of this podcast, I had Dr. Rob Gilbert, and Rob Gilbert is he's the founder of the Success Hotline. Every day, every single day since 1991 or 1992, he's left a motivational message on this phone number, and you call in and you get a new motivational message every single day, every day. And I asked him one time, I said, how do you do that? Like, how do you do something like that every day for such a long time? And he goes, Jim, it's not hard. He goes, when you were competing, you practiced every day, didn't you? And I'm like, yeah, I get it's a good point. When you really commit to something and you understand why you're committing to it and you have a reason for it and you commit to doing it, you just do it. Like Seth Godin, he writes his blog every day. You've written your blog every day. It's when you commit to doing something, you do it when you commit to doing it. And it's really interesting. So how does somebody find their Sidsha? I mean, we can, like you said, it could be exercise. It could be something different. And actually, let me preface that with telling you something I'm doing right now. Dr. Gilbert, as a matter of fact, on one of his Success Hotline phone calls at the beginning of summer, this was right around Memorial Day, he said there's 98 days of summer. And he challenged all the callers, all the listeners to not eat, it was like cake, candy, cookies, soda, and something else, and chips. And go cold turkey. We're not going to, for 98 days, we're going to, not eat junk food. And I thought that's awesome, 98 days. And I thought to myself, I eat really healthy. It's not something that I struggle with. It's something I'm very comfortable with my diet. I eat very healthy. And I said, but what can I do? What can I do for 98 days in a row that would be meaningful? And I realized the one for me, the challenge for me didn't need to be my diet. Something that was important to me and maybe this goes back to understanding yourself and leading yourself, was my relationship with my wife. That's the most important thing to me. And so I've made a commitment to every single day this summer for 98 straight days to do something small to honor her every day. And some days it's just leaving a Post-it note on the mirror for her to see after I go to work, or in other days it's bringing her home flowers, or different things. So that's what I've committed to. But how does somebody go about finding their own Sid shower? What's right for them?
So there's a couple things. First of all, that sounds awesome. And I woke this morning to a surprise massage. And so that's something, if you haven't done that one, I recommend putting that one in there.
That's great.
And
that's a good idea.
So I think burpees are a great one because they require no equipment. There's no training. There's no risk of injury. And there's plenty of videos of like how to do them, and you can do them without the push-up if you want. I recommend picking something, make sure it's self-imposed, that it's daily, challenging, and healthy. And if you're not sure what to do, start with something, and then you'll find this isn't quite working, but keep doing it until you find a better one.
Yeah.
The ones that
taking action.
Yeah. And so I like active ones myself. I mean, the three that I have are my burpees, which has now become that whole routine. There's writing the blog, and then there's cold showers. So cold showers I did every day for 30 days, and now I do it once every fourth day. So that's not quite daily, but it still counts. For me, that counts.
Sure.
Cold showers have this advantage of that of all the things people can do, they don't take away from the rest of your life. It's like you're going to take a shower anyway. You just don't touch the knob with the H on it.
Yeah, it doesn't take any more seconds out of your day.
Yeah, and it actually probably gives you time because most people take shorter cold showers than hot showers.
Yeah.
And so what are some things that people do? There are people who dance a little bit every day. There's like skills that you can learn that are like artistic. So like drawing, taking 5 photographs a day. But if you do things like a passive thing, like taking a photograph, make sure you show it to people so that you can get some external, something that you're demonstrating, something involving a performance. So you could do something like writing a business idea every day, talking to a stranger every day, writing a few business ideas every day, writing a blog post every day. And if you do something athletic, I recommend be careful about weather, because I have a friend actually a former client, he took up running. And I said, well, it's difficult because if it gets cold and rainy and stuff. So this guy has been running in the rain and snow. He's running at least a mile every day.
Wow.
And then he ran his first marathon a little while ago, and he ran a second mile like a week later. I'm sorry, he ran his first marathon last spring, I think. And then he ran his second marathon like a week later.
Wow.
So there's a lot of things you can do. Just start with something. You can meditate every day. And there's so many. And once you start doing it, you'll realize this is awesome, or I can do something different. Make a gourmet meal or a really healthy meal every day. And
that's pretty cool. And mine that I'm doing right now, it's not the same thing every day. It's the same. It's the same idea, the same concept every day, but there's some variety. So I'm not actually repeating the same thing every day, but I'm doing, I'm doing something to show my wife that I'm thinking about her, that I care every single day. So there's a little bit of variety there.
Well, that's a nice challenge, because if you're not doing the same thing twice, or even if you could do it twice, you probably might not want to do the same things too many times because it might get boring for her.
Yeah.
There was a course that I didn't take this course, but it was a course called Jazz at Columbia. And the homework assignment was every time you went home from class, you had to walk home a different way. And so everyone, the first day you'd walk home, you just go straight home. Yeah. But apparently by the end of class, people were like going home from the class, like a 10-minute walk. They'd go by way of like Queens. And that's improvisation.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. You find a way, right? If you commit to something, you find a way. It's interesting.
Yeah. And then eventually, to me, I think of like burpees. I have to say, every single set of burpees that I do, I don't want to start. I mean, intellectually I do, but it's hard to start,
sure.
Especially now it's like hot. And I always do. And that's an amazing skill to have. What was I going to say? Overcoming that challenge is like a really big deal. If people pick things that are too easy, you got to make sure there's a challenge in it.
Yeah, like you said, the skill, having that skill, it's a skill that you develop, doing something that is uncomfortable. Joe DeSena, Spartan Races, I interviewed him, episode 27. He talked about doing, taking the uncomfortable route every day, finding a way to do something uncomfortable every day. Wayne Kurtz, who I interviewed, episode 47, he writes his goals every single day. For I forget how long he's done it, but he's written down his goals every single morning at 4:00 in the morning or 4:30 in the morning. He's actually a guy who, you talk about the discipline, what comes first, the chicken or the egg, but he actually is one of very few people on the planet who completed what's called a triple deca Ironman. He ran an Ironman a day for 30 days, which I didn't even know was humanly possible.
Wow.
But Wayne Kurtz did that. So for the listener, if you're curious, that's episode 47. Amazing individual. Talked a lot about goal setting there and really strategies and a framework for goal setting. And then just recently I interviewed Tommy Baker, episode 54. And one of the things he does every single day is he finds one or two people to lift them up, whether it's through just a quick text message or a note or a handwritten note or an email. He does something to lift people up and brighten their day and say something positive to somebody, whether it's a friend or somebody he hasn't talked to in 10 years or somebody he just met on the street a few weeks ago. It's really interesting how, a lot of the guys, now that you talk about this, I see a lot of the successful people that I've had on the show, a handful of them actually do that. So it's really interesting.
I would bet more than a handful. I'm very humbled by these people. I'm like, you've had guests in space and stuff like that. It's, and I want to add that anyone who's listening to this, a lot of people say to me, wow, you must have amazing discipline to be able to do this. You must have a lot of dedication. And they have it backward. It's not that I have discipline and therefore I could do this. I did this and that developed my discipline.
Yeah,
it's
wow,
like thinking,
perfect.
Like it was what kept me out of the weight room for so long. I was like, oh, muscular people go in there. I don't have muscle, so I shouldn't go in there. And it's backward.
Yeah.
And anyone who's listening to this, who's thinking to themselves, well, they could do it, but I can't. That's how you become them.
Right.
And that's why when you said a piece of advice, I think that the Sid Shot concept is, I'm totally going to get in trouble for this, but like I got sidshot.com and the page isn't up yet, but all the listeners, like, wait a couple months and go up and see sidshot.com because
cool.
I'm totally going to get in trouble. I'm going to say, like, this is the most important concept in personal and professional development since before, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah, that's my favorite book, by the way. Yeah.
It's great, yeah.
But wow, that's cool. Man. I'm 100% behind the idea. And what you just said about, the discipline, you do it and you develop the discipline. It's not, you're not a disciplined person and therefore you do it. It's the other way around. And I always talk, when I run, wrestling camps and clinics for kids, high school kids and whatnot, I say, how many of you want to be a state champion? And they all raise their hand. It's like, well, that's not really what counts. What counts is how many of you are willing to do the work that it takes just to have a shot at becoming a champion. You don't get really good and win matches and then start doing the work that the champions do. You've got to do the painful stuff first. You've got to do the work, and then the successes start coming. And that's in anything, whether it's wrestling or burpees or writing a book or building a business or whatever the case might be. Building a relationship or getting more healthy, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and the benefits are just off the charts. The people that are in your life when you live that way, I feel like there's a big divide. I don't know if I'm seeing something that's not there or if it's really there, but there's people who take responsibility and initiative, and this develops that. This is, when you take on challenges every day and you make it a part of your life, then you find out there's a lot of people like that, and you connect with those people. And I'm sure the people who aren't like that connect too on something else that I don't connect with them on, but that's their business. That's not my business. And I really like you found me. And I started listening to your stuff, and it's like that. I feel like there's a connection, and I feel like I'm doing things that I couldn't do because, and I'm taking on challenges that I wouldn't like. I never really thought of wrestling. And I was listening to your stuff, and I was like, man, because I have to tell you, when you first contacted me, I thought, I'm going to get in trouble because I'm going to talk about how Ultimate is such a great sport. It's better than all the other sports. And then I'm like, fuck, sorry. I'm like, man, wrestling's a serious sport. Like wrestling, man, that's a sport. If for no other thing, Ultimate didn't exist until plastic was invented, but wrestling goes back to the beginning. it's like wrestling and sprinting seem like,
right.
what else? I mean,
yeah, wrestling and running, right?
Sprinting in water.
It's one of the original sports. It's actually the oldest documented sport in history, wrestling. So yeah, it's a hard sport. I'm obviously partial to it. I've interviewed a lot of different guests, lacrosse players and endurance athletes and on and on. I got a surfer coming on, a former competitive surfer coming on shortly. So I've got a lot of different athletes on, but the unique thing is a lot of people just have a lot of respect for wrestling. It's a painful sport, even if you're good. You go through practice and you get beat up.
I can't imagine what it must feel like. I can't imagine what it must feel like to get pinned, and it must feel really helpless.
And then the humiliation part. I mean, if you lose, you're walking off the mat, and another man or boy just beat you. And even women now these days, it's my son wrestled a girl a couple years ago, and it's just a hard thing. It's like when you walk off the mat and another human being dominates you, versus just losing a game, which is still a bad feeling.
And there's no sun was in my eyes or the wind or whatever, and then you got to go out and do it again, and that's like that character must be. I've just been thinking about this. Like I haven't thought too much about the sport, but I've been thinking about it more since you contacted me, and I'm like, I wish I'd done a little bit. I mean, I'm glad I played Ultimate, but that would have been something.
Yeah.
But that's what happens. You connect with people on things like this when you care, when you put stuff in, when you try to win. And I don't mean win. To me, this competition there's two meanings to the word, as far as I can tell. One of them is compete, and people don't like. Sometimes this gets a negative perspective from a lot of people. It's like competing means like trying to win over someone else. I don't necessarily see the negative in there, but some people do. But then there's another meaning which no one sees a negative, which is to say someone is a competitor means that they're finding out what they have. They're trying to become the best they're reaching their potential in this area. And that kind of competition is just, it creates something in you and yourself and connects you with others in a way that nothing else does.
Yeah, and you're competing against yourself a lot of times. It's that. Whenever I figured that out as a wrestler, whenever I realized that I'm not competing against an opponent, I'm competing against myself. And once I figured that out, then the weight was lifted. I was able to finally reach, at least closer to my fullest potential, which is what we're all really after, and which is what the listener is after, is reaching their fullest potential. And with that in mind, let me ask you this. What's one action that the listener can take in the next, let's say, 24 to 48 hours to move closer towards their goals, move closer towards being the person that they want to becoming, getting closer to living to their fullest potential?
Well, I mean, I got to go back to the Sidcha. Pick a Sidcha, and if I'm gonna add to that is like make yourself publicly accountable to, if it's writing in a blog or it's posting things online, so that people can tell that you're doing this. Or it could be that you're going to email a friend every day to make sure that if you stop doing it, like someone knows. Because accountability is one thing that gets things done. And then once a lot of people are like, how long does it take for Sidcha to click? I'm like, what are you talking about? From the moment you start. It's like, actually now, like as much as I like, I'm approaching 80,000 burpees. But increasingly, burpees are like brushing my teeth. Like once in college, I woke up from coming home drunk and I hadn't brushed my teeth the night before. And as far as I know, I've never not brushed my teeth, but I don't count that as a Sidcha. It's not that hard.
Yeah. Good point.
But now it's like, it's not something for me to be proud of. It's just something I do. And to get to the point where something very challenging, and of course, then you have to keep increasing the challenge. Like once it becomes easy, if you're doing like, if your Sidcha is going to be like push-ups, and now you're doing like 100 push-ups, and that's not hard for you, you got to put a weighted vest on or something. Add something to it. Keep adding to it. But once you start, when I'm doing my burpees, I'm thinking about like when I turn what is it going to be when I turn 70, when I turn 80, that something's going to give and I'm not going to be able to do this. But until then, like, that's it. Like, there's no when's it going to click. it's just that mindset of like, this is what I do. It's one of the things that I do. And 10 burpees is like 30 seconds, a minute.
Yeah,
Now
you can
it's
make
like
that change now. You can make a change today for the listener. You can make the change today. You want to be better in some area of your life. You don't have to go read 10 more books or listen to more podcasts or take another course. Like, it can change today. It can start right now. It can start with a decision. And you're right. And then you bring in the accountability. It makes it even easier. You start writing it down. I believe in writing down your goals. That makes it even more real and more concrete. But it can start in an instant.
Yeah. And if you find out that like, this isn't the one for me, switch it, fine. Just as long as it stays challenging and healthy. And then what I can't tell you is how it will start feeling, but the magnitude of how it feels is going to be fantastic. And I'm sorry, I can't predict what it will give you. But look, I'm writing for Inc. magazine. How did that happen? You think my writing 2,000 posts by that point had something to do with that? I can tell you the writing at the beginning was not Inc. quality. And now it's like, it wasn't like a formality for me to get started, but they weren't like, it wasn't very challenging. They just brought me on board.
You can't stumble into something unless you're moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love it. Man, there's a lot of great stuff in here, Josh. And for the listener, the action plan is going to be chock full of a lot of this advice and everything that we're referring to here. And that's at jimharshawjr.com/action. Josh, how about a book recommendation? Any books that you can recommend? 1, 2, 3 books that you might recommend that the reader check out or the listener check out?
Yeah. Well, the book that I've given away, the book that I cannot keep on my shelf because I keep giving it away is Getting to Yes, which is the book on negotiation. I don't know. Have you read that one? Or
I know it. I have not read it though. Love it.
I highly recommend it. It's like, you will not regret reading this book. And then if you fast forward 6 months, maybe a year, I don't know how long it takes because I'm just in the middle of the process, but my book, Leadership Step by Step, will come out eventually.
Great.
I'm in the middle of writing my first draft and getting it to the publisher. I got to put up, Men's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl is a big one. And since we're talking sports here, the recent version of that is there's a book by a guy named Mark Zupan called GIMP. And if you saw the movie Murderball about wheelchair rugby, which was nominated for an Oscar, he's the main character. And he wrote this book about how there was a drunk driving incident where he almost died. He was not the driver, and he almost died. And then when he woke, he had lost control of his. He was quadriplegic, and went through this very difficult period, and then emerged as he was a soccer player, but now he couldn't play soccer, so he became a wheelchair rugby athlete, won a Paralympic medal, and I'm reading this book, and I'm a dude, right? I'm a guy. And tears are just streaming down my face, like as if I'm watching Oprah, but Oprah doesn't have this effect on me. And that book made a big difference on me. And so GIMP by Mark Zupan is another one that's like, it's more timely and recent than Man's Search for Meaning. Of course, Man's Search for Meaning is incredibly classic. Yeah,
incredible book as well. And for the listener, I will have links in the titles of all of these books that he referred to, as well as I reference back to a bunch of different podcasts of my own that are related to topics that we discussed here. So for the listener, I will have links to those podcasts as well in the action plan for this episode, and that's at jimharshawjr.com/action. Josh, where can the listener learn more about you, find you, check out your courses, etc.?
To read my blogs for the personal stuff is joshuaspodek.com. So that's JOSHUASPODEK.com. And then for my courses, that's all at spodekacademy.com. So that's spodekacademy.com. Then eventually sidcha.com will be up. That's still in development. So it's sidcha.com. And yeah, I'm happy to hear from anyone. And man, I have to say, I've really enjoyed, I'm working my way through your podcast too. So everyone listen to this one, these more, they're already listening to them.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. Well, I appreciate it, and I appreciate you making time to come on the show. I know you got your hands full. You got your hands in a lot of different things, so I appreciate you making time.
It's been my pleasure, and I look forward to following up however I can.
And for the listener, until next time, just like when you were an athlete, take the time to get clear on your goals and embrace failure as a stepping stone on your path to success. Wrestling with Success is a member of the Athlete on Fire podcast network. Check out all of our shows at athleteonfire.com/podcasts.